The following article contains depictions of torture, potentially emotionally charged topics, as well as descriptions of gore. Listen at your own discretion. SCP-6086, Level 3, 6086 Classified. Neutralized. The following documents have been first compiled on 12th of June, 1906. Since the neutralization of the anomalous entity on the 2nd of October, 1912, no changes to the document have been made outside of transcribing the file to a digital format. Due to the above reasons, the following file is classified as archived and does not represent modern and current containment standards deployed by the Foundation. Any complaints to the Ethics Committee about actions taken toward SCP-6086 and treatment of the anomaly will not be accepted. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-6086 is to be contained within a chamber that allows for easy access and movements for a human-sized entity. The door is to be comprised of heavily resistant materials and possess a viewer that would allow for an overview of the room. The containment cell is not allowed to possess windows or similar objects. The recommended furnishment of the room is as follows: bed, a toilet with active plumbing, a shower with a drain that cannot be removed without the usage of tools, a single table, 2 chairs. The electrical lighting within the room is to be constantly on. During emergency situations like generator malfunction, it is perfectly acceptable to turn it off. No objects that could potentially be used for self-harm or attacking others are to be stored within the containment cell. If it is necessary to bring such objects into the chamber, they are to be removed as quickly as possible. The amount of nutrients and water SCP-6086 is given all under the jurisdiction of the lead researcher of the anomaly for experimental purposes. Description: SCP-6086 is an entity with high biological proximity to Homo sapiens, originating from Devon, southern England. The subject is approximately 1.76 meters tall and weighs, on daily average, 48 kilograms. Its weight had fallen from 83 to 55 kilograms across the first year of containment, and then has been steadily falling at the rate of around 1.4 kilograms for the next 5 years, and believed to be around 71 years at time of writing. The subject possesses several anomalous qualities of unknown origin, believed to mainly originate from a supernatural growth of cells in the entity's body. As a result, SCP-6086 shows high regenerative capabilities, ranging from near instant healing of small tissue damage, like cuts or small burns, to the regeneration of whole limbs across hours. The subject is believed to be capable of regenerating any part of its body. The increased cell growth seems to also affect both the probability of formation of cancer cells, as well as the body's natural immune system, causing and often creation of cancer clusters that quickly decay. Many superficial appendages have been found on SCP-6086's body, most likely as a result of unregulated cell division, mostly manifesting as black hard outgrowths or scaling coverings. Sections also proved the existence of multiple pseudo-organs in different parts of the body that do not serve any actual biological functions. For the manifestation of increased cell growth to occur, the body consumes a high amount of nutrients to create the necessary tissues. If done in quick succession or on a large body part, may lead to high amounts of weight loss. As a result, SCP-6086 requires high amounts of nourishment intake to keep up with the usage of fat and muscle tissues for regeneration. To support that process, the entity is believed to possess abnormal metabolism, capable of digesting material up to 20 times the normal amount for its body weight, comparable to a human. The second main anomalous effect of SCP-6086 is the capability to resist biological death. resulting in superficial immortality. The limits of the effect are unknown, but the entity showed the ability to regenerate to a state of full biological functioning after processes that would regularly end cell regeneration and hypothetically terminate the anomalies. Examples of that are decapitation, severe whole body burns, or dissolution in strongly acidic substances. SCP-6086 cells continue to grow and regenerate without necessary requirements for such an effect to occur in a regular being. It is unknown where the entity obtains material used for regeneration in post-mortem state, as the overall body mass of the SCP-6086 doesn't shrink or even grows compared to pre-termination state. During such an event, it has been observed that partially or mostly destroyed cells are still capable of regeneration. Despite that, SCP-6086 still possesses a need for sleep and water and nutrient intake to be capable of high-level functioning. Being deprived of those elements causes the entity to enter a catatonic stupor. While it is judged that the potential effects to bypass the post-mortem may exist, it is believed that SCP-6086 is impossible to neutralize with standard and easily accessible methods. It is not known whether the entity would eventually self-terminate due to old age. Discovery of SCP-6086. SCP-6086 was found on the 2nd of June, 1906 in Plymouth, Cornwall, Great Britain. It is believed that the entity didn't possess any living family or close friend and had been working as an independent carpenter with irregular working hours and unstable employment. The anomalous effect was discovered when a field agent stationed in the town observed a work accident involving SCP-6086. After an unrelated fire destroyed most of a commercial building, the entity was contracted to assist in repairs by Parkinson and Maxwell United Restoration. Due to previously unknown structural weakness during mentioned above day, a support column collapsed, causing grave injury to SCP-6086 and trapped it under debris. Entity succeeded in escaping from under the collapsed building, missing a leg, left hand, and part of facial bone and skin, which was observed by the field agent by accident. SCP-6086 then returned to its house, located on Alvington Street, where it regenerated missing body parts. The process was seen and recorded by the agent, who managed to enter the house. Foundation personnel stationed in Site-37 was notified and a containment procedure was initiated. Due to the lack of human-like anomalous entities in the Foundation's care, no protocols for such a scenario existed and could be implemented. A crisis resolution meeting was held by the highest level Site-37 personnel to determine the course of action regarding SCP-6086. A transcript of the meeting is available in the file below. 5 additional field agents have been deployed in order to contain the entity, approaching it in its house at 2 a.m. on the 8th of June, 1906. Signed personnel successfully apprehended SCP-6086 through physical means and enforced a state of unconsciousness, after which the being had been secured and relocated to a holding cell at Site-37. Meeting participants: General Director of Site-37, Donald Miller. Assistant General Director, Joshua Bailey. Researcher Director, Fabian Turner. Security Director, Simon Ridley. Transcript of the emergency meeting on the 8th of June, 1906. Beginning of transcript. I would like to begin this meeting by recounting what happened to make sure we are all on the same page. Recently, in a nearby town, Field Agent Albert Norwin discovered a human exhibiting anomalous properties. While we highly suspected the existence of such individuals and possessed some level of proof for them, written and spoken record alike, Due to a lack of good information nets, we never succeeded in containing such a being. Because of this, we do not currently have any protocols about dealing with such entities, and cannot proceed with any action. Furthermore, due to the possible high intelligence of the anomaly, I believe we are not in the luxury of waiting for an order from our superior, so I called this emergency meeting to discuss what activity we should partake in to regard the discovered entity. Could you elaborate on what you mean by human exhibiting anomalous properties? Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a hold of the reports before the meeting. The being is believed to possess the form of an older man of the laboring class, with anomalous regenerative capabilities of unknown potential. This property was directly observed by a field agent I previously mentioned. How do we know he is actually human? I'm afraid we do not have such certainty. Any other anomalous effects we should be worried about? At the moment, we have not received any information about that. I think we should prioritize securing the entity as the highest level of priority. First human containee could prove extremely beneficial, and at the very least a historical event. Aye, but what about security protocols? I think it would be most appropriate, for safety's sake, to treat it with standard high security containment protocols, unless a reason to do otherwise arises. I'm afraid standard procedures might not suffice. What do you mean? Most containment doesn't take into account a high intelligence of the anomaly, as most contained living entities do not exhibit advanced problem solving. I think we need to establish much harsher containment to avoid the risk of escape. What would suffice, in your opinion? At bare minimum, reinforced doors, no windows, and steel fortified walls. But if we are talking about actual, proper, and safe containment, I would require the stationing of guards, constant lighting, unregular meal, and isolation. Why that? If he is miserable, he won't be able to escape. I think such actions are warranted because of the potential threat we are facing. Won't this have the opposite effect? Isn't cooperation the better course of action? At best, that's naive, Bailey. What are you proposing that would mandate that we have to trust the anomaly, which is a concession I don't think we are ever allowed to make? I concur with Security Director Ridley. We need to prioritize the safety of the site and the general populace over a single individual. I don't like it. What you are describing is barbaric. Sentencing a human to something like this for safety. You heard the director. There is no proof that the entity is human. How is that different from regular anomalous objects we house? There is no proof that he isn't human, Fabian. A suspicion of danger doesn't warrant such treatment. The scenario in which we assume the entity is human poses a much greater risk than the one which we assume it's not. The necessity of the reality of the situation dictates that we have to proceed with every possible safety precaution in mind. How should we handle apprehension of this being? Given current information, few field agents might suffice in capturing it, since due to the effect of the anomaly, there is no fear of accidental termination. They managed to temporarily neutralize it. Securing it to the facility shouldn't be much of an issue. Potentially neutralized? Do you mean kill him? In a completely pointless sense, yes. I agree with what was presented by Ridley. Maugre by our own doubts, we need to set aside idealistic notions and focus on reality. I will send additional reinforcements to Field Agent Norwin, and we will secure the anomaly to the highest security standard possible. Is there anything else we should discuss? In the exigency of successful containment, I would like to reserve the position of Project Director for this anomaly for myself. All right, accepted. End of transcript. Containment log. Interrogation of SCP-6086, 9th of June, 1906. Interrogate T, SCP-6086. Interrogate her, Dr. Fabian Turner. Interrogation subject, determining basic information from SCP-6086. Welcome, Mr. Durat. I believe you were informed of the circumstances that befall you. It was Mr. Turner, lead researcher director of Site-37. Mr. Turner, I had been informed about what, yet the people I spoke to didn't care to tell me why. We are tasked with securing and researching abnormal phenomena in order to assure the preservation of the human race. If that's the goal of y'all, then why attack me at my home and lock me up? All supernatural phenomena is a threat of the world and humans at large, and have to be removed from the public eye. If that's the case, why do psychics and other weird things go on? I'm afraid that psychics are in fact not real, at least all that we have investigated so far. Is that so? Well, another disappointment on the list. Going back to the topic at hand, lad. If you want to help humans, then I'm a human. That is yet to be determined. Could you tell me more about the anomalous ability you possess? Never found it that strange, to be honest with ya. I just healed faster. Nothing much. Small things like when I hit myself with a hammer or saw heal right up. Bigger grow back with some time. When did you first learn of this ability? When I was still a boy. Let me tell ya, maybe 10 or 11. I was sailing boats with my dad. He was a sailor, and a bloody good one. We used to go out and fish to bring some good catches back home. When you know where to look, the canal had some great things to find. When we were out one time, a storm took off, and we scrambled back to the shore, even kicking out all we got so we didn't get pulled down. I still remember the screams of the sailors on nearby boats as the sea got to 'em. It's pretty hard to navigate as the waves hit your body and face, and winds want to knock out of your lungs. We managed to dock at a beach, pretty sand for our south, eh? And got out in one piece. My dad went to get a torch back home and told me to collect the sail to dry it. Suddenly, devil's piss, the mast broke and fell on my hand as I crouched. It was painful as three hells, but I managed to move the log and my hand was suddenly healing itself. Not really a pleasant feeling, turns out, but after a few minutes it was like new, before my dad even returned. I see. What do you think is the cause of this ability? I don't know, lad, I just do. Did any family member exhibit anomalous effects? As far as I know, no. Could you tell me about your family? Dead. All of them I care about. How so? Plague got 'em. Almost everyone went sick all of a sudden when I was 30. Me and the whole town included. The horrible thing it was, only me and my father got through it. He died of dysentery a few years later. The doctors told me, and the plague weakened him, but I have never seen the body. Like he disappeared one day and that was that. Thank you, Mr. Durat. That will be all. Wait for a minute, young man. Now that we have all helped each other and everything sorted, I would like to go home. I'm afraid that's not possible. Not possible, my ass. You took me and you can put old me back. There's no reason for me to linger here in this cramped cell. As I said before, we are tasked with securing and researching anomalous phenomena. This entails the need for study and confinement of supernatural forces, both of which are forcing us to make sure you remain at the facility. How that's fair? It isn't. It was never meant to be. We are abiding by the safest course of action. Please, just let me die in peace instead of this gutter. That will be all, Mr. Durat. End of transcript. Experiment log. The 11th of June, 1906. Subject SCP-6086. Lead researcher Fabian Turner. SCP-6086 had been neutralized in its containment cell using intrathecal or spinal administration of morphine. The entity showed an uncooperative attitude towards the process, requiring forceful application of the opioid. It had been moved to a secure research laboratory in order to study the regenerative capabilities of the anomaly. Using a scalpel, small parts of the skin, about 1 square centimeter, had been removed in the chest, forearm, lower spine, and inner thigh areas. The time to regenerate mentioned fragments was about 4.5 seconds, without significant time deviation between different regions. In the same areas, 1 centimeter squared of muscle tissue of similar proportions to extracted skin fragments had been removed and regeneration was observed. This time necessary for regeneration varied by muscle type, with more complex dense structures requiring more time, from 95.2 seconds to 193.8 seconds. This confirms, to a certain point, that regeneration of SCP-6086 isn't dependent only on the amount of cell and overall area, but more complex tissues require increased time. This was further confirmed by the removal of a part of the liver, 1 square centimeter, which took 443.1 seconds to regenerate. The entity was returned to the containment cell within 2 hours and regained consciousness after another 2. Experiment number 2, 20th of June, 1906. Subject SCP-6086. Lead researcher Fabian Turner. Due to the possibility of opioids and other similar substances interfering with the subject's regeneration and bodily reactions, the previous experiment has been repeated without the usage of morphine or any other type of substance which could lead to a change in biological activity. A greater difference between regeneration times in drugged and not drugged subject has been exposed, up to 157% increase of speed of regeneration. The most important change was shown in the restoration of muscle tissue. Regeneration of SCP-6086 seems to also be affected by its psychological state. Strong emotions like fear and pain seems to increase the amount of cell regenerated, and by that speed of the overall process, this effect may be the reason why during unconsciousness, lower regenerative capabilities were observed. In order to not create misleading data and maximize research potential, further experiments will be conducted without any sort of chemical dampeners. Experiment number 3. Date the 1st of July through the 1st of August. Subject SCP-6086. Lead researcher Fabian Turner. In order to determine the biological needs of SCP-6086, the entity had been left without sustenance for 1 month. Starting on the morning of July 1st, no meals or water had been delivered until the morning of August 1st. Every 5 days, starting on the 1st of July, in order to create control data about regeneration would be collected by craving a patch of skin on the left scapula. After the first week, it became apparent the entity didn't require sustenance to survive. This was later confirmed during the later weeks of the experiment. While a loss of weight had been noted, actual biological processes didn't show signs of slowing down and stopping, with the exception of metabolic organs, which ceased functioning. The regeneration also wasn't affected by a lack of nutrient and water intake, progressing without a change of the whole duration of the experiment, on pace matching previously recorded data. SCP-6086, after the first 3 days, began showing signs of distress and intense suffering, reporting burning pain in the throat and stomach regions. The being was observed talking to an unknown most likely imaginary, person, and most likely trying to comfort itself by that. Attempts to escape through the door have been made without success. After day 5, the entity ceased most physical activity, spending most time laying in bed with only a limited movement, activating itself only during the removal of tissue samples. The conversations persisted until day 7, after which SCP-6086 stopped exhibiting any obvious signs of being alive, except involuntary muscle movements like blinking. During day 11, SCP-6086 attempted to bite a researcher, carving a piece of skin and muscle tissue from its right shoulder during the collection of another tissue sample. Despite high levels of hunger, the entity refused to eat the flesh, instead opting to spit it out. During day 16, the researcher previously bitten by SCP-6086 had been found trying to smuggle food to the containment cell during another tissue collection session. The researcher in question has been reprimanded and moved to another project due to interference with a research project. After day 20, the entity no longer exhibited any signs of activity, even during tissue collection the next day. In order to provide the necessary level of safety, the vitals of SCP-6086 began being checked by medical staff every 6 hours. At any point of the experiment, no threat to the entity's life was detected. After the end of the experiment, August 1st, the entity was incapable of intaking nutrients on its own. Necessary amounts of sustenance were delivered using intravenous injections. Experiment number 4, date the 2nd of September 1906. Subject SCP-6086. Lead researcher Fabian Turner. Due to SCP-6086 psychological instability, all further experiments will take care exclusively inside its containment cell. Necessary equipment will be transported inside for the duration of the experiment. After recovering from Experiment 3, SCP-6086 had been restricted and secured to an operating table to ensure the safety of the entity during the collection of data about the regeneration of larger body parts. The process began with smaller parts before moving on to larger. As a control group, a 1 centimeter square area of skin tissue was removed on the left thigh. No deviance in regeneration was detected. The first object removed was the distal phalanges, together with all related tissues, of the left index finger, moving further to the entire metacarpals and previous segments of the index finger of the other hand, which is of note the efficiency of the body in stopping bleeding, almost instantly blocking all veins. What was observed is the process didn't occur by platelets, but by the growth of regular tissue matter. Later blood tests confirmed that SCP-6086 blood lacks any sort of thrombocytes. After regeneration of the left index finger was completed, the whole hand had been severed by cutting between the carpals and forearm bone. The sensuous observation indicated that the first part of the body undergoing regeneration are the nerves, shown by the high amount of distress SCP-6086 in answer to physical contact with the regenerating limb. During the further removal of the right arm, SCP-6086 didn't exhibit any signs of shock, remaining fully conscious during the whole process. Given the context of other experiments featuring the entity, it is highly possible that it is immune to such effect given its anomalous properties. Experiment number 5, date 15th of September 1906. Subject SCP-6086. Lead researcher Fabian Turner. SCP-6086 has been secured to an operating table with metal straps, holding its legs above the ankle and the knee, holding its arms above the wrist and elbow. While not originally planned, additional straps have been issued over the neckline, pelvis, and shoulders due to a safety concern regarding the entity's potential thrashing. Using a scalpel, the entity's chest had been cut along the middle of the abdomen and the line between the nipple and the solar plexus, forming a Y shape. The muscle and skin tissue have been separated to give access to the chest and stomach cavities by either folding outside or severing unnecessary tissues located between bones have been removed using scissors. The ribs and the sternum have been removed using a bone saw. Starting from the lower abdomen, organs began being extracted, beginning with the large intestine. After no direct threat to the entity's life had been observed by the medical staff, the small intestine was also removed, together with both kidneys. What is worth noting is that outside of pain and related forms of distress, SCP-6086 has shown no particular suffering from the removal of metabolic data collected by the previous experiments suggest the entity doesn't require these organs or any sort of metabolism to survive. SCP-6086 remained in a similar state even after the removal of the pancreas, stomach, and liver. A significant change occurred only after the extraction of the lungs, which caused the entity to begin suffocating. Cell decay in some parts of the body was observed, but the overall life of SCP-6086 wasn't in danger. After the removal of the heart, the entity entered a catatonic paralysis on a superficial level, similar to death. It remained in that state until full regeneration was achieved. What is of note is the fact that while in this state, cell division occurred without the usage of pre-existing matter, seemingly creating new cells out of nothing. Experiment number 6. Date the 16th of September 1906. Subject D1231. Lead researcher Fabian Turner. SCP-6086's organs have been secured in an ice water solution 3 to 7, laced with bacterial deterrent. Due to the fact that cell regeneration seemed to not cease upon being severed from the main body, no additional steps were considered as necessary. D1231 had been sedated using opioids and secured to an operating table. Due to a risk of death not present while dealing with SCP-6086, the research team opted to limit the experiment to a transplant of the left kidney. The organ has been transplanted without complication, and D1231 woke up. Upon regaining consciousness, he claimed a burning pain in the stomach and the feeling of needing to vomit. Despite that, no abdominal movement that would result in the removal of the matter in the stomach occurred. The effect quickly increased, described by the subject as alike to insects eating through his body, in a combination of piercing and cutting pain with tingling. D1231 suddenly died 2 hours after being woken up. The autopsy revealed that the cells of SCP-6086 migrated from the kidney to the other parts of the body, as well as the organ itself grew to thrice its original size. Many cancer-like cell clusters were found in different parts of the body, slowly consuming tissues of D1231. The death of the subjects was most likely tied to the invasion of SCP-6086 cells to the brain. Experiment number 7. Date 29th of September 1906. Subject SCP-6086. Lead researcher Fabian Turner. To test SCP-6086's ability to recover from different types of bodily harm, the entity was strapped in a sitting position, giving access to its legs and arms. SCP-6086's cells seem to possess no resistance to increased temperature, be it in the form of fire, metal rods, or heated gas. It is possible that the entity's body is even less heat-resistant than a normal human, due to an unknown oxidation agent that was found in the cell walls. Nonetheless, despite being mostly destroyed, as long as some form of internal organelle remains, the cell is still capable of diving, and by that, regeneration. On an extreme example, a subset of cells was found to be able to regenerate, despite up to 87% of their total mass being destroyed. On the contrary, the oxidation agent found in the cells seems to provide resistance to chemicals. The entity cells seem to resist the breakdown of cell walls for a prolonged time, up to 65 times the amount of time needed for tissue matter of a regular human. The same regeneration quality was found in the tissues that were dissolved by the acid. Instead of burning, edge cases, when cell regeneration was capable of overpowering the acid, were also found. Experiment number 8. From the 12th of September to the 4th of January 1906 to 1907. Subject: SCP-6086. Lead researcher: Fabian Turner. To test the limit of SCP-6086 survivability, several experiments have been conducted across the span of 3 months, summarized in this entry. Details about specific experiments can be accessed in the supplementary document collection. The thesis created in answer to the data by this experiment states that no known non-anomalous source is currently capable of terminating SCP-6086. What was found by multiple attempts to neutralize the entity is that the greater the threat to its life is, the greater pushback occurs. Examples of that are increased cell resistance to damage, increased speed of cell division, and in edge cases, change from 1 to 2 division type to even 1 to 15 division. The main part that constitutes the source of the regeneration was proven to be the brain, shown most clearly by the decapitations done between the 7th and 15th of November. In case the head was separated from the rest of the bodies, no attempts to regenerate a new head was made by the carcass. Instead, the decapitated head grew the rest of the body back. Additionally, in case the severed body is placed directly on the place of the cut, it is possible to reattach the head in some cases. Due to the increase of resistance to damage by cells, as a threat to SCP-6086 becomes greater, the possibility of neutralization with chemical or heat agents is dubious at best. As more cells get destroyed, the overall strength of the tissues becomes durable to the extent that achieving consistent damage over 90% is extremely unlikely. Starving the entity of oxygen seems to also not cause permanent damage, resulting in catatonic paralysis, observed in other situations where high-level functioning becomes impossible. This was tested both by drowning and perfluorobutane poisoning. As proved by Experiment 5, SCP-6086 can survive without possession of almost all organs in an active state and all organs in a catatonic state. Furthermore, the removal of the brain, as written above, caused the regeneration to spur from the brain, creating the rest of the body. In the case of fractioning the brain into multiple parts, the one with the most linked tissue will begin regenerating. It is possible that the regeneration of SCP-6086 is caused by a metaphysical source. Further experiments are necessary to conclude the true nature of SCP-6086. Site-37 Director Meeting. Meeting participants: General Director of Site-37, Donald Miller. Assistant General Director, Joshua Bailey. Research Director, Fabian Turner. Security Director, Simon Ridley. Beginning of transcript. What's the point of this meeting, Bailey? I have to get done with administering a new supply line from Site Redacted Strategic Data, which I will remind you, you caused me to oversee. You are. I beg your pardon. I've gathered you to discuss the SCP-6086 research project. What's the issue? We gained some great insight throughout the last few months. I believe everything is going very smoothly. I finally gained access to the research files a few days ago and I almost puked. Have you actually read the document? Do you realize what is happening under your nose, Director? Unfortunately, I did not find time, especially with Project Redacted, lack of relevancy, classified under Level 4 clearance, happening right now. Assistant Director Bailey hands in a pre-prepared block of documents. Bailey, have fun! General Director Miller and Security Director Ridley begin reading the files. I don't see an issue with the research. Dr. Turner didn't violate any safety protocols or regulations. You don't see an issue. Here, look here. They did a live vivisection. Here they kept making him swallow different types of acid to see if they could damage him inside out. And here they literally decapitated him 23 times in a row to collect data if slightly different types of cutting edges affect regeneration. Dr. Turner was in his full competence to execute these experiments. At best, it's a violation of human rights. At the worst, simple butchery. Since when are anomalies considered human, Assistant Director? And even if he isn't, what does it change? Because, Bailey, then it's not a violation of anyone's rights, but prioritization of overall benefit for humanity over the comfort of the research subject. Comfort my ass, this is what we call not being tortured now? Can this charade be over now, Director? I would be glad if I was able to return to work. I understand your concerns, Josh. Ridley is right. The experiments you show us do not violate any statutes of the Foundation. Since when are there statutes about anomalies like that? Since we agreed on the approach to the entity at the emergency meeting. Then what's stopping us from changing what we do? The fact that there is no need. Meeting dismissed. We have better things to do. End of transcript. Containment report. Since the first day of its containment, SCP-6086 has shown an uncooperative attitude. Despite our best efforts, the entity didn't accept its reasonable confinement and the social and scientific benefit and even necessity of it. While highly regrettable, this has proven that an amiable approach to human-like anomalies isn't realistic, and more extreme measures must be taken to guarantee the safety of the populace and the Foundation personnel. Security Director Ridley's proposal on regulating SCP-6086's mental state has proved to be highly fruitful in deterring risks related to containment of a sapient and cognitive being. While for some time after being apprehended, around 4 weeks, many escape attempts were observed, after maintaining a necessary amount of physical and psychological anguish, the entity seems disinterested in, on even unable to, commence more security breaching actions. During most of the day, SCP-6086 is inactive, either laying in bed or sitting on the floor in an unchanging position for multiple hours. After a period of 1 to 5 hours in that state ends, the entity normally exhibits a violent outburst, in most cases in the form of screaming, crying, or, on rare occasions, laughing. In some situations, SCP-6086 has also been observed talking to itself on seemingly random topics or reminiscing its childhood, but the frequency of this activity has decreased across containment. In response to confrontation with Foundation personnel, the entity reacts with fear, attempting to distance itself from the encountered individual, in most cases by retreating to further possible side of the cell. Due to the fact it is necessary to remove SCP-6086 from its containment by force when required, a strong reaction to physical contact was also observed, mostly in the form of tears. The entity seems to receive high amounts of anguish from human touch, no matter who commenced the action. Similarly, a fear of physical objects was also shown by the entity. The greatest reaction is found by medical items, such as scalpels, laboratory coats, cloth face protection, rubber gloves, operating tables, or any other similar items that draw even loose similarity to medical equipment. To conclude, I consider the 608 research project as a success. The described approach allows us to gain vast amounts of scientific data while minimizing potential risks. I believe that the accessation of generalized policy tested in SCP-6086 containment should be used in response to other human-like anomalies. SCP-6086 Research Project Leader Dr. Turner. Bailey-Rosen Proposal. Preliminary reading. Due to the importance of context in the following proposal, preliminary files had been attached. Readers are strongly advised to familiarize themselves with them before proceeding further. Proposal Meeting. Meeting participants, Assistant General Director, Site-37, Joshua Bailey. Overseer, O5 Redacted. Beginning of transcript. O5 Redacted sets up a pocket alarm clock and leaves it on the table. You have time until the C5, Clearance 5, not officially sanctioned term, meeting starts. Make it count. As you probably know from the brief I sent, I'm Michael Bailey, the Assistant Director from Site-37. Yes, I remember. SCP-6086, was it? Yes, I contacted you, in part, to make a complaint about the treatment of the anomaly. Are you sure this is the right channel for it? Procedures about regular containees are below the level of my responsibilities. Why didn't you find a more suitable approach? I can imagine getting into contact with me wasn't easy. I did, of course, I did, but at best I was kindly rejected, at worst, ridiculed. Then why are you choosing to pursue it? I don't believe this is a simple matter of a single anomaly. What we are creating with SCP-6086 is a precedent for decades to come. What we did and will do about this person is going to affect the Foundation to a level most are ignorant of. I understand what you mean, but why do you consider what the research team has done to be wrong? It is creating a narrative of us against them, anomalies being treated as an enemy. It will create a hostile atmosphere of distrust where we are seen as the objective villain, where those who might come to us willingly will be righteously scared to do so. Aren't we already the antagonist to many? What is the difference here? A moral one, ma'am. Elaborate. We are exhibiting grave violence against it for questionable benefit without pursuing other options. We are choosing to be evil, not after being good has failed, but as the first option of the table. I'm not naive or idealistic enough to think we can always be the moral adjudicator, but I believe it's our obligation to be a fair one. Morally repugnant acts instead of the last resort are becoming the starting point. A position when not the one who seeks the extreme has to convince everyone, but the one that does not. Aren't there risks with a more lax attitude? Of course, but isn't it always the case in our, especially your, line of work? Balancing risks, walking the line between what we can do and must do. Please restrict yourself to factual arguments. Of course. What I meant to say is the risk itself isn't a valid metric to make a decision. It should be used to create a context to other possible options to allow us to decide which we are able to take. Whatever we are privileged to partake in, the more morally acceptable approach, or are forced into the immoral one. There are certainly situations where a radical option has to be explored, but it is definitely not always the case. And in SCP-6086's situation, I think the lightest possible way to describe it is as a gross misjudgment from Site-37 staff, a miscalculation of risk that they do not want to admit and amend, and even worse, is impossible to amend by now. Elaborate. While regular anomalies can be subject to any containment without inherently affecting it, live or human anomalies are subject to change based on their treatment. Treatment of SCP-6086 left a psychological mark that destroyed who mentally was before our incarceration, which we cannot reverse. What would you want to be done in regards to the treatment of such anomalies? Main problem, I believe, is the lack of existing infrastructure to handle such problems. After the failure at the point of contact at Site-37, no additional steps were able to be taken, other than appealing to the director of her board of the site, which already reached a consensus. If a wrong decision is made in any other department, research, logistics, containment, or any other, the next step would be to bring the issue to a suitable department, where they would consider the complaint and, if necessary, take the steps to amend the problem. While in SCP-6086's case, no institution where one could appeal exists, and other departments are unable to do anything because, from their perspective, no violation occurred. The anomaly is safely contained and properly researched. Technically, no problem exists, because it's not a utilitarian one, but moral. On the other hand, other Foundation facilities are also as incapable of any actions, because they are now allowed to facilitate control outside the jurisdiction of their site. So to reiterate, you are saying the current system of organization isn't ready to facilitate moral dilemmas. Yes, ma'am. Then what are you suggesting? I would like to propose the creation of an independent council that would oversee the moral questions of the Foundations. What authority would this council hold? Highest possible. Full access to information, full control over all research projects and containment procedures, if necessary. Just below O5 Council. An advisory body of sort. I have to inform you that due to security reasons, you or anyone who worked with you on this proposal in a significant way will not be allowed to be on this council if the bill passes. I and my collaborates are aware of that. Good. It's quite a radical thing you are proposing. I know, but otherwise it wouldn't have a point. An institution that claims to enforce morality has no way to do so. The alarm clock goes off. That would be it. I will contact you later this week. If the idea is well received, you will be asked to create a formal proposal in writing, which will be reviewed by the O5 Council. Be prepared to provide necessary information at a moment's notice. O5 redacted leaves the room. End of transcript. Interview of SCP-6086 researchers. Meeting participants Dr. Fabian Turner and Thomas Rosen. Overseer redacted. Beginning of transcript. Please state your credentials for the record. I'm Dr. Fabian Turner, a level 4 or clearance. I'm the research director for Site-37 and current research project leader of SCP-6086, SCP redacted, and SCP redacted, lack of relevance, as well as a board member of the British subsection of the Logistics Department. I oversaw the Project Redacted, lack of relevance, classified under Level 4 clearance, and the creation of procedures regarding containment of the first human-like anomaly. I'm Thomas Rosen, Level 2 clearance. I was part of the research team working with SCP-6086 until I was dismissed and moved to another project, mainly SCP Redacted, lack of relevance. for what was described as an obstruction in research. Describe the events that led to your dismissal. I was moved to the SCP-6086 project because of my experience as a surgeon, which was seen as useful given the nature of the planned experiments. I was moved at the beginning of experiment number 3, where I joined the medical staff overseeing the entity's health. My job was to collect samples like skin fragments by forcefully removing them from the entity's body. The experiment was testing how it responded to highly hostile conditions like starvation, dehydration, lack of proper sleep, and similar. I was tasked with monitoring whether the entity's regeneration is affected by those things. I was dismissed because I was caught trying to give food and water to SCP-6086. Explain the reasoning of this action. I felt it was wrong, really wrong. We're basically torturing him for a potential hypothesis. We still are. I know I couldn't do anything about it, so I did the only thing I thought I could do. I don't think anyone should be allowed to do such things. It goes against human decency. Even the Hague Convention banned such actions. Researcher Rosen, we are neither a nation nor at war, nor is it confirmed that SCP-6086 is a human. And even more important, we did not take part in the Hague Convention and signed it. We are not regulated by international law that we actively don't decide to be regulated by. Dr. Turner, could you provide your perspective? Of course. Every action that was taken by me relating to SCP-6086 hasn't in any capacity breached Foundation regulations that existed at the time or now. I was in my right to choose such a course of action. What's even more important, I delivered impeccable results. Since containment of the entities, no risk of escape were presented by it, and we gained greater insight into the inner workings of the anomaly. And the question of morality. I believe morality has no place in a discussion like this. Our work is too important to dwell on such fickle, subjective things. And instead, we should prioritize the objective benefits. There is nothing to gain from treating anomalies with pointless care, and so we shouldn't do it. It's a waste of both physical resources and personnel as well as time. How would you describe the current state of SCP-6086? Easy to control. How would you respond to the allegation that your treatment of the anomaly irreversibly damaged its mental ability? Since the mental state of SCP-6086 possesses no effect on its overall anomalous qualities, it can be ignored, as the research is not influenced by it. There is no difference between it being able to do advanced mathematics and recite poetry and a complete coma. Researcher Rosen. Yes. Please give me your perspective on the presented issue. Even if the anomaly is not directly linked to the mental capacity of SCP-6086, possibilities regarding it are still limited by its cognition. Lack of proper communication, for example, makes it impossible to extract information from him. All necessary interrogations were conducted before actions that would lead to damaging it. And nonetheless, like all data that it still might have or will have is now fully unavailable, like descriptions of its internal state. You described possible metaphysical aspects to SCP-6086. It might be impossible to research it without its input. Baseless hypothesis. How do you know that? You keep prioritizing research benefits only when it suits you, and ignoring them when they don't conform to your actions. That will be all. You are dismissed. End of transcript. Proposal summary. The following proposal advocates for the creation of an independent Foundation department called the Ethics Committee. The TEC would primarily work as an advisory body to the Overseer Council and possess all necessary resources to fulfill their duties to the highest degree possible. All members of the Ethics Committee would be chosen internally through a voting process, requiring a full approval of the governmental body called the Internal Council. No member of the Ethics Committee can be removed from the office by force other than by the ITC. If one is chosen to be a member of the TEC, they are to abandon all current tasks and as quick as it is possible, and join the designated board. Membership to the Ethics Committee is not disputable and not dependent on the willingness of the chosen individual. After serving 10 years in the Ethics Committee, a member can choose to retire at any given time. If such an action is taken, the individual in question is to be removed from the Foundation's chain of command through a standard retiring procedure. Reinstating former board members as Foundation personnel is not allowed. The job of the Internal Council is to regulate the internal violations of the Foundation's and the Ethics Committee's rules and remove any member abusing power given them by the institution. Governmental body overseeing violation outside of the Ethics Committee is the Morality Council. The job of the MC is to oversee and review all Foundation activity to determine the best acceptable course of action. All members of the Ethics Committee are automatically given the 5th level clearance upon joining the Council, giving them full access to all information about past and future conduct of the Foundation that can be safely viewed. If a violation is observed, a member of the Morality Council will be sent to inform the personnel in question of the transgression. If no proper action is taken within a reasonable time period, chosen by the deployed member of the Morality Council, the Ethics Committee can enforce its ruling using all means necessary. All future actions taken by the Foundation personnel of a potentially ambiguous moral background have to be approved by the Morality Council before proceeding. Overseer vote summary, status approved. Ethics Committee Directive. Following the creation of the Ethics Committee, a verdict about SCP-6086 and personnel related to the anomaly was discussed by members of the Morality Council. The information presented by the directive isn't exclusive and only concerns matters explicitly stated. All personnel mentioned are not cleared of all charges, and affairs not expressed can be grounds for future prosecution. The directive isn't available for appeal and can be used for grounds for legislation for the next 30 years. As the first verdict given by the Ethics Committee, we wanted to express special care in the handling of the case of SCP-6086. Over the past months, we performed a scrupulous investigation into the entity and all related matters and conducted over 32 interviews of the personnel that took part with the SCP-6086 containment and research. The first matter that the Council decided upon was the fact whether SCP-6086 can be considered as human. The arguments for human status are as such. The entity possesses a physical appearance indistinguishable from a human outside of laboratory study. The entity, prior to containment, lived as a human and partook in human society. The entity's mind is believed to function indistinguishable from a human. No deviances were found across its containment. The entity considers itself to be human. While the arguments for the lack of human status are as such, the entity's whole existence is dependent on the anomaly. The underlying biology of the entity is formed by the anomalous effect. The anomaly is an inherent part of the entity instead of an outside effect. Accepting all of these statements as true, we came to the conclusion that SCP-6086 is not human and cannot be considered as such in future documents and legislation. Nonetheless, the question that comes after this verdict is what is the consequences of SCP-6086 not being human. As it stands today, no regulation regarding the containment of humans exists in SCP specimen, but since the verdict states that the entity is not human, that has proven to be of no consequence for this case. Instead, regulations regarding the containment of live specimens will be used. Outside of specific legislations, the set standards of procedures have been set as enough of care to guarantee the survival of the contained entity. Given that basements and the treatment of SCP-6086 has not been a violation of any set standard. Because of that, any actions that were taken by Dr. Fabian Turner during the research and confinement of the entity cannot be used as a basis for any disciplinary action. On the other hand, researcher Thomas Rosen has been cleared of all charges. While breaking legislation, the action of researcher Rosen has possessed no threat to the safety of the site, civilians, or Foundation personnel, and possessed low to no threat to experiment conducted. The reasoning of his conduct was seen as valid, and the measure itself to be done with the concern of the benefit of the Foundation. Due to concerns of many members of Foundation personnel, SCP-6086 will be removed from Site-37, and future research will commence at Site-17. Additionally, Dr. Fabian Turner will be removed from the SCP-6086 research project, and adequate personnel will be assigned at Site-17. Containment Update. During relocation to Site-17, SCP-6086 was being removed to the United States eastern coast, more specifically Boston via a cargo ship, Trelawney. For the duration of the travel, SCP-6086 was confined to a room on Deck 2 of the ship, with the door being locked. Due to previous experiences with the entity, no other means of security were present directly next to it. Via unknown means, when the ship was already 450 nautical miles away from the nearest coast, the entity broke the lock, fully removing it from the door as well as the upper door hinge, and proceeded to try to escape. The entity was soon seen by Foundation staff and security was informed. Due to the potential risk of SCP-6086 jumping off to the ocean, all access to the outside deck was blocked by armed personnel. It is unknown what the consequences of such a proceeding would be. While it may be possible that it would survive this and eventually return to the coastline, or become trapped at the ocean floor, the retrieval of SCP-6086 would most likely be impossible. As the security began moving closer into the decks and cutting off travel routes, the entity began moving downward, towards the cargo compartment. While the personnel was cutting off the access to all upper decks using the fact it moved into the delves of the ship, the entity barricaded itself in the cargo hull. According to the Trelawney schematics, no routes off the ship existed outside of the outside decks. When a security guard broke through the barricade, he encountered SCP-6086, which was waiting next to the door. Upon entering the room, the entity initiated physical confrontation. Due to fear of harming the anomaly, the guard failed to pacify it and it escaped, heading to the engine room. The security guard proceeded to chase the entity, with 3 other guards joining the chase as well along the way. SCP-6086 was eventually cornered, at which point it was observed falling into the engine of the ship. It is unknown whether this was a purposeful attempt at suicide or an accident. The entity came into contact with engine pistons, dismembering, ripping, or crushing most tissues in its body. At the same time, it began regenerating its body, resulting in tissues constantly rejoining and becoming severed. After 26 minutes of the process, the engine was turned off and slowed down to a level that allowed for the extraction of the entity. Most likely due to the extreme forces present, high temperatures, excessive amounts of body mass, including additional redundant limbs and organs, and constant regeneration cycle, SCP-6086, upon being retrieved, didn't regrow its body properly, instead creating an ambiguous mass of flesh. Currently, the entity weighs about 162 kilograms and is around 6 cubic meters in volume. Almost all of its body parts were fused with each other, but some level of motoric abilities is still present, mostly manifested by spasms of random muscles and movement of what is believed to be the mouth and eyes. Data collected by Dr. Turner shows that reversing the process is most likely impossible. A small amount of cell decay was observed across the whole body. No process that could potentially stop or accelerate this effect is known. SCP-6086 will most likely die within 5 to 10 months. At this point, we can only hope he is no longer conscious. Assistant Director of Site-37, Joshua Bailey. Overseer Council Note. A great challenge to the Foundation was present on the 2nd of June 1906, and many say this challenge was not met. The first anomaly presenting itself as a human, at least the first one we had direct confirmation of, was a milestone day for our whole mission. A new tide that will inevitably change the course of our organization and the world as a whole. On the 2nd of October 1912, the anomaly known as SCP-6086 officially was designated as neutralized, first one to be contained as well as the first one to be lost. The existence of this entity sparked great controversy and great debates among the voices of the Foundation, and yet the horror of its demise was a topic even louder. After all, it is this being that is leading our path forward, maybe even in death, even more than life. As the Overseer Council, we are introducing new rules and regulations regarding human-like creatures renamed as Humanoid, for the sake of clarity and ease of communication. The standard created by the Independent Biological Entity Act, by some known as the IBE Act, proved to not be enough when dealing with a being that is not only biological and independent, but also sapient and cognizant. The basis of secure containment has to provide not only the minimal standard for survival, but a sufficient standard for life for their circumstances. Not only the bare minimum psychological needs need to be taken into account, but physiological as well, as necessary harm brings more problems than benefits. What has to be stated is that the basis for this change is that of a utilitarian background and not a moral one. All Foundation personnel are reminded that prioritizing anomalies over humanity, no matter whether they are contained or not, is strictly prohibited and a violation of the highest degree. Humanoid entities are not a group in need. Humanoid entities are not neighbors with a world in common. Humanoid entities are not victims. Humanoid entities are a threat. Secure, contain, protect.